Hey, Dr. C here with you. Here's some information about how to eat to help not get magnesium deficient. So this is a real problem. We've seen data from the NIH saying that 68% of Americans are deficient. Some other studies suggest that number might even be as high as 80%. And there's debates about deficient, suboptimal, but nonetheless, we see that large numbers of people aren't getting minimal amounts needed per day. Magnesium is super important. We use it in over 300 body processes. It's a cofactor in pretty much everything. So yeah, all facets of health can be affected by this. You can suspect you're low if there are some ongoing symptoms, things like muscle twitches and cramps, muscle weakness or soreness, irregular stools, mood being irregular, irritability and anxiousness. If bone density has been off, blood pressure has been high, heart rate's irregular, insomnia, unexplained fatigue, these are all things that can relate to low magnesium status. And apart from just getting enough, there's many medical conditions that make people apt to be low in it also. Autoimmune disease in general can do that. Thyroid dysfunction, too much or too little thyroid hormone. Any kind of ongoing gastrointestinal illness, so Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, IBS, kidney disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, all that stuff can affect it, make you lose even more in that. So it happens. And the pitfall is that some of those conditions I mentioned are things that can be worsened from low magnesium. And they can be causes of low magnesium, so it can be a vicious cycle. And then even common things like medications, stressors, caffeine, alcohol, low amounts of nutrients like vitamin D, these can be drivers of it as well. So common thing. So here's some starting thoughts on ways to keep your magnesium healthy. The first one is watch your caffeine, cut the coffee levels lower. Coffee strips your body of B vitamins, and these are big natural energy sources. It does also speed your elimination rates for magnesium, calcium, potassium, and iron. So you eliminate them faster, but also you absorb them more poorly. So if you've got these symptoms, or if there's concerns about that, cut back, avoid, reduce, minimize. Coffee and caffeine can be a big trigger. And then there's thinking about whether you're low in it or not. And this can be measured in a couple of different ways. There's serum magnesium tests, which pretty much all labs can do. They're really easy, commonly available, cost-effective. Well, the pitfall is that they're not very sensitive. And here's what I mean. So magnesium is mostly stored inside your cells. Not a lot of it is just floating around inside your serum. The amount that is maybe 1% of your body's magnesium pool. So when that part gets low, you're low, no questions asked. But you can get low long before it shows up in the blood levels in terms of serum tests. Now, there's hair tests too. And hair tests, they're cool, they're non-invasive, they're non-prescription, they're easy enough to do. However, there's not a strong connection between magnesium in the hair and magnesium in your body supplies. So it's there, it can be measured, but if it's high or low or whatever in the hair, that may not reflect where it is in your body. One of my favorite methods when it is a real concern are RBC magnesium levels, red blood cell magnesium levels. So red blood cell tests exist for many minerals, and how they're different from serum is that they give a better sense of a longer term average. So your red blood cells live for about 3 months, and magnesium attaches to their outer membranes. So by measuring the magnesium there, you're getting more of an average for a longer period of time, as opposed to serum tests, which show short-term stores and are highly buffered by the body's deeper pools of magnesium inside the cells. Red blood cell tests are not as subject to that. So they're one of the better ways to help analyze it. And then we think more about ways to augment magnesium. And there's been data and there's been thoughts about topical magnesium, magnesium soaking, and this is interesting. Definitely you do get some magnesium in your bloodstream from across your skin. I can't find good data on how much. I don't think it's well known how much that converts. So you'll see things like magnesium oils, magnesium creams, and they probably have some effects, but the question is, how does that equate to pills or foods? And we're not clear on that. Epsom salt soaks, Epsom salts or magnesium sulfate. You can put a few pounds in a tub and soak in that, and nice thing for sore muscles. Hard to say exactly how much your magnesium status changes, but probably some. And then even a more extreme thing, there's a process called sensory deprivation. So a company called True Rest, they've got some versions of this that are in many areas. And basically, you're in a little pod, a little float pod, a tank, and you're minimizing all the data coming into your brain. So the pod is quite dark, it's quiet, it's in a quiet room. The water that you're in the pod is body temperature. And there's about 3,000 pounds of Epsom salts in the water too, so it makes you like a cork. So altogether, you're floating without any effort to stay up. You're just bobbing around like a cork, and there's really minimal tactile information coming in from your skin because you're not really touching anything except the water, and that's at body temperature. You know, no light, no sound coming in. So it's this really intense version of rest where you never really experience that little brain input in day-to-day life. You know, there's always fabric you feel when you're in bed, there's always some light or some sound. So this is a pretty cool experience if you've not done it before. People talk about its benefits for just stress, you know, and chronic pain issues. And I can't help but think that some of the benefit may come from magnesium. You know, when you're in this pod for an hour, and as much as there is in that tank, as high as the concentration is, there must be some that absorbs. I'd be curious about exact numbers, but I don't think that's really known. But another fun thing to think about. So a few more facts. Our bodies store at any given point in time about 25 grams of magnesium. So that's like 25,000 milligrams. This is typically in bones and muscles with only small amounts in the bloodstream. Each day we pee out about 120 milligrams, but we also lose a lot through our stool and our sweat. So on a daily basis, we think that women do best with at least getting 300 milligrams total, and men more like about 420 or greater. And we've got this in some foods we'll talk about, but also supplements will contain that. And both are probably the better ways to go rather than either. Supplements are better off to be spread out in at least 2 doses. If you take a lot of magnesium at once of any type, it's a very effective laxative. It binds up with water and it can just like flush out your intestinal tract. So it's used as a laxative, but the pitfall about that is it's hard to absorb when you take a lot at once. There's different chemical forms of magnesium. Dimagnesium malate is one of the preferred forms. It's a type that is well absorbed, but not an intestinal irritant. So it's not as good as a laxative as some types like mag citrate, but it's better to raise your magnesium levels. And that's the type that I use for the daily reset pack. So eating, so foods for magnesium. This is kind of a funny thing, but there's a molecule that has 4 lobes on it, these 4 porphyrin lobes. And when it has iron at the core, we call that hemoglobin. When it's got magnesium at the core, we call that chlorophyll. So chlorophyll is what makes plants green. So one general rule is that the more green things you get, the better you do in magnesium. But by and large, chlorophyll is kind of like plant blood. So plant foods across the board are all rich in that. And the categories that are highest would be legumes, whole grains, greens, and then also seeds. They all have that. There has been legitimate concern about, you know, how much we have in our current food supply versus past food supplies. The thought is that fertilization, so NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, could reduce the amount of magnesium in our foods. And there have been assays done in the recent past about magnesium content in foods. We don't have a lot of data to compare against past levels, so it's hard to say exactly how much lower we are now. Maybe there was more in the foods in the past, that could well be, but we know about what we've got in foods now. We know about how much we need, so might as well move forward. You know, I hear a lot of bemoaning about that in general, and without a time machine, you know, we got to do the best we can. So yeah, that's why I like both food and supplementation. So what are some of the biggest food sources? Well, for common serving sizes, you'll see this in, again, a lot of plant foods. Wheat bran is actually really high. Wheat bran is something that can be used by itself. That's also obviously found in whole wheat products. Tofu is a rather rich source of that per serving. We'll see a fair amount in dried apricots. Figs are pretty good. Almonds are rich sources, chickpeas. One of the higher types of foods would be adzuki beans. And these are really awesome things. You know, these are small red Japanese beans, quick cooking, really tasty, you know, easy to work with. Pumpkin seeds are also an unusually high source, so those are big ones. Oats are quite a ways up there, and lots of ways to use that. You guys know it's a big favorite of mine. But yeah, those are amongst some of the richest. I've got a longer list of other sources on the blog. There's a little bit of magnesium in sea salt too. Now, it's about 3%. You'll hear arguments about sea salt being better than table salt because you get more minerals. And it's true you do get more minerals, but apart from the magnesium, none of the other minerals are in amounts that are relevant. So, for example, sea salt has potassium, and we need potassium. But using about 2,000 milligrams of salt per day, if you use sea salt, that might give you an extra 0.01 milligram of potassium, so about 1/100th of a milligram. And how much potassium does your body need? Well, about 5,000 to 7,000 milligrams per day. So that doesn't change your potassium balance. And it's the same story for other minerals that sea salt has too, like zinc or iron or whatnot. They're there, but it's almost like, finding pennies in the sidewalk to become a billionaire. You won't get there by doing that. And you won't change your mineral status by consuming sea salt. But it could help a little bit with magnesium. So at 3% and at 2,000 milligrams a day for salt, extra 60 milligrams. So not too bad. Now the one thought about sea salt is iodine content. And those with thyroid disease, we've got to be mindful of that and not get excessive amounts of iodine. So I've seen that the Celtic company, I have no financial ties to them, they have a light gray sea salt. And the coarse and the fine versions of that are minimal in iodine based on multiple independent assays. That's not true of their other products, and that's not true of sea salt in general. I've seen a lot of assays of sea salt, and the iodine levels are all over the board. So if you wish to use sea salt, please do one of those types from that exact company. So a daily thought process is that each day, if you're getting about 2 servings of greens, a couple servings of whole grains, 1 or more serving of legumes, and 1 or more serving of nuts and seeds, you're probably doing pretty well. Along with that, an extra 100 milligrams from a good multivitamin, especially if a plant-derived magnesium like in the Daily Reset Pack, you should be in good shape. There are some unusual cases where even with those steps, someone can run low, and they would suspect that based upon some of those symptoms persisting. And that can be checked for and ameliorated by higher dosing short-term. Some need IV dosing for a little while to get built back up again, but that's rather rare. So overall, with a good balanced diet, basic supplementation, and then avoiding the things that make you lose it really fast, you can do better on your magnesium. Hope that was useful. Dr. C with you, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.